on the book The Day After Roswell, which spawned a great deal of controversy and debate, which we'll all get into later on this afternoon. But for the time being, what I wanted to do, as a consequence of working on that book, and again, an additional pleasure that I had not contemplated when I began, was meeting the very intriguing, as you will find out in approximately 90 seconds, the very intriguing Phil Corso Jr., who grew up in that house with his father during the course of his father's career and learned more secrets about the Colonel than I ever knew, than the publisher ever knew, than anybody else ever knew. I saw one side of Lieutenant Colonel Corso. I saw the professional side, the military side, the side of the man who, and I'll say this unabashedly, was a member of a generation that all too sadly has long since passed. An absolute warrior for the flag. And he's gone. And his generation that fought and won the most terrible war this planet has ever seen is going as well. But he left a great legacy. And one of his legacies, which you'll hear, was the personal side of this man, what the other secrets were that I don't know about, that you don't know about, that the world doesn't know about. So to tell us about all this is Phil Corso Jr., my friend.
Thank you. My wife said if I dress like a preacher, you'll listen to me better. So here goes. In the beginning, God created man in his image. Man stood there in all his splendor and instantly returned the favor, creating the opposite, God in man's image. I often talk to my father about this paradox, and I finally asked him right before he passed away in 97, what is the image of God, Dad? And the answer still today, I dwell on it, and I think you may too. My father said, the image of God is the intellect. The reason I mention this to you is because today's speech, or talk, is going to be about my father, prior to finding out about the day after Roswell, why it was written, and what my father wants me to convey to you. I'm not going to try to convince you today of the truth or the validity of the book, because it's been out long enough that you've already made up your minds. I will say to the debunkers or the people that disagree with the book and put it down, thank you very much. Keep up the good work, because Bill and I own the royalties, and it helps controversy, helps sell books. Great. Thank you. Thank you for my pocketbook. Let me go back to when I was a boy. When I was a boy, and I'm going to begin somewhere around the time of 1947, when my father first claims that he saw the alien bodies in Fort Riley. I was just a boy then and pretty mischievous like most boys. I burned down the Indian reservation. God help me. And from that time out, I realized that my father was quite a different person. He didn't spank me. He never laid a hand on me. My father was always a type of person that was able to talk to me, and he loved me very much, and I returned the favor to him. Around the time of 1957, my father became the commander and chief of the 552 Missile Battalion in White Sands, New Mexico. I was 13 years old at the time. I decided that I was going to run away in the desert for whatever reason. I can't remember now, but it must have been important at the time. I was gone 2 days, and my parents didn't even know I was gone, so they claimed. I had an experience there that produced some photographs. I had a little Brownie camera. And I don't want to go into my experience because it's not important. I'm here to speak about my father. These photographs later, in around the time of 1964, I had a friend, Skip Selden, came back from Vietnam, And I was always interested in UFO phenomena because of these photographs. And I said to Skip, I said, I took some photographs when I was a boy and blah, 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 blah. And he says, oh, I have a friend in the night vision laboratory in El Paso, Texas. I'll have him send you your photographs. And sure enough, my photograph showed up. This was always a sore subject with my father, very sore. Remember, my father had 9 clearances above top secret. He worked for the Eisenhower administration. He went back to the Truman days in Korea. He went on with the President Eisenhower and up through President Reagan. The reason I mention Reagan, he was the only person that my dad's group would let privy, the only president privy to the information at Roswell. But the photographs always were a sore subject. I want to get back to this. I'll go up to the time of about 1989. I ran a small marine electronics shop in Florida. And I was sitting in a Denny's restaurant down in Lantana. And I had a very good friend, David Shearer, that was a black belt. One of his studies in the Eastern philosophies was he could look at your eye and tell impurities in your body, operations you have. And I was quite impressed by David's ability. And I asked my father at that dinner table, where's my photographs? Since this was always a sore subject, my dad just kind of ignored me and told me to be quiet and so on and so on. He says, I gave those away to General Sammet and such, and Gene Dixon has them. It was always never a true place where these photographs disappeared to. And if I may say, the only lie I think my father ever told me in his life was about those photographs. The day I got up to go to the little boy's room, or my father did, and David said, don't talk any more about that subject to your father, because his respiration went up to such and such and such. And David was always right on just by looking at your eyes. So he says he knows more about that subject than he's telling you. Well, let's go up to about 1992. 1992, I ran a little business called the Marine Electronic Wholesalers. My father, at that time, really had nothing to do. He was retired. So I said, come in, help me out, Dad. Sit behind the desk. And when I go out to work on the boats, you bring me what I need, answer the phone and such like that. Well, he had a blast. I can remember President Reagan used to call him, and Dad would stand at attention behind the desk, yes, Mr. President. He wanted to know mainly about foreign affairs. My dad was an expert on Soviets at that time, even though he was retired. The important thing here is to let you know that my father kept everything, all 9 levels of secrecy, completely quiet to our family. Until behind his desk, when he had nothing to do, I said, Dad, start writing your memoirs. Well, he started writing his memoirs, and he called the book what was the name of that book, Bill? Walked with Giants. And Dawn of a New Age, yeah. These books were not meant to say anything about UFOs or his R&D time between 1960 and 63, but there was a small paragraph just in one of them, and a fellow named George Knapp was looking at this. We had sent this to 17 different places and turned down by 17 different places. And he saw this little paragraph, and he called my father and asked him to expand on it. So when he began expanding on it, we realized that there was a whole nother story here. Now, this is the very important thing that I want to tell you. The book was never meant to be written. But when he writes his memoirs, this paragraph appears. Now, let me see, I lost my train of thought here. The paragraph appears in there. The book gets rewritten. Of course, it has to be popular. So Bill comes in and makes the book popular, sellable, and such like that. It was done in an extreme hurry. My father reason that the book was able to be written in 1992 was my father claims that there were 30 generals And these 30 generals and himself, and the reason he was only a colonel instead of a general privy to this Roswell information was that the I lost my train of thought. Help me. Yeah, they had a battlefield oath, the 30 generals, and this was a brotherhood. And coming from this brotherhood, they decided that no one was going to know this information except for President Reagan and, of course, Eisenhower, because Dad had Colonel North's job or originated a job during that time. The last to die, they said, could tell. The last to die was General Trudeau, which he worked for, and General Trudeau passed away in 1992. So Dad felt that he could go on and elaborate from this paragraph and write the book. It was a shock to me, shock to the rest of the family. In the beginning, it was that we didn't believe him. We questioned him over and over again. He says, oh, no, it's all true, and such like that. Why did you hide my photographs? Why did you do this? Were my answers and such. His answers on the photographs were, well, you didn't need to know. And being an intelligence officer and actually founding the basis of our intelligence apparatus that we had since 1947, which he attended Cambridge University, to learn intelligence and bring back to this country and teach this intelligence training to our country. He is a person that would never say a thing unless he felt that you need to know. The book was elaborated on, and his main reason for writing the book was to let the young people know. He felt that the young people could handle the knowledge of knowing that we have been visited, that there is other places, that there is more than meets the eye to our life or our planet. He left a stack of documents for me. I've tried to distribute these on the internet. No, it didn't happen. It got shut down 2 weeks after we opened the internet. Our family, after my father passed away, we've been sued by people we didn't even know their names. And it's just, thank God that we were able to protect ourselves and come to the point that we're at now. I don't attend these conferences. I don't do these conferences. It upsets my 3 teenage sons, but I feel a compelling to at least keep myself in your image a little bit, where if something does happen or these stack of documents cannot be revealed, that you will know the reason that I'm floating down the Potomac River. We've had visitors to the house, very important visitors from the White House. I've been told at 40,000 feet, point blank in front of my nose, what to say, what not to say. I will say this. One of the things I'm not supposed to talk about is the Kennedy assassination. My father was Senate internal investigator that investigated the Warren Commission. It's still classified. And all I'll say to most of you is the directions that you're looking are not correct, and there are 50 people alive that it would still embarrass. And the financial advisor to John Jr. Came to my hangar. I built him an airplane, and they never picked it up. It was strictly to let me know what's what and what to say and what not to do. The book, The Day After Dallas, will never be written. That was my agreement. Sorry, folks, I sold out. I have a family, and that's the way it's going to stay, at least until I pass away. Sometime, maybe my children, my 3 teenage boys, will let that book be written. UFO subject doesn't make any difference, because it won't make any difference. Anything I say, anything Dr. Greer says, it won't make any difference. I will say this about Dr. Greer. God bless his soul. He really is truly trying to help. But you have to know where to look. He's looking in the wrong place for the wrong reasons, and it will never happen until someone knows where to look. My dad's documents say where to look. I had to hide these for 3 years in someone's attic until it was able to be put on microfilm and have enough people have it that we know that if the true documents, the real documents are destroyed, that we still have the other documents. One of the reasons that you won't know what takes place, and the small culvert groups that do keep it protected, like Dr. Greer says, is the fact that we had the Philadelphia experiment. My father, Hollywood portrayed the Philadelphia experiment as a fluke, as a freak, that it shouldn't have happened, that it was a cloaking device that went wild and such. Not true. My father, before he passed away, which I have the document, the true document from the Philadelphia experiment, which I'm not supposed to say because these things could be deemed as classified, that Einstein worked on that experiment, my father revealed. And if Einstein worked on it, there were many others that worked on it. Remember, my father was in charge for Eisenhower Operation Paperclip, which brought von Braun and Olbert and such to this country, which worked for my father the entire time he was in the military. These people, these scientists, there's a reason that the culvert groups think that they're doing the right thing by protecting these technologies and keeping you from knowing and me from telling you. And the reason is this Philadelphia experiment is an experiment in time travel. It worked, and it worked well, and we've had it for a long time. Now think about this. Just the fact that you would know that there's a future would allow you to do things that you shouldn't be doing. For instance, would it make any difference if we dropped an atomic bomb over in the Middle East? No, because the world's still going to be here. We know that, don't we? So you got to think about time as a timeline. And the timeline that we're in right now, because of the gift of Roswell, and as I say gift, I don't say accident or a crash, because of the gift of Roswell, because of this timeline, we live in an altered timeline. We have supertenestial fibers, we have integrated circuit, we have laser, we have fiber optics, all which came between the period of 1960 to 1963, which my father and General Trudeau put out the money and the artifacts and the teams of scientists to work on these items where you can have them. Remember, all this came from a Jeep. The Jeep at Roswell contained only these artifacts. Who has the rest? Well, and my dad has left films saying the Air Force has the rest. It went to Wright Pat, which was a different name in those days and such like that. If the Air Force would, my father was a critic of not the Air Force, because he said he would not ever criticize a sister branch of the service, but he would criticize some of the people in there, including the Secretary of the Air Force, for they are the ones that are keeping these technologies from you. And the reason they're keeping it from you is under the screen of national security or whatever reason, you know. It's been 50 years later. My father, during the signing of the book in New Mexico, he had numerous colonels come up to him, generals, and saying, "Colonel, you're absolutely right. We work on this technology every day. Get this monkey off our back. It's been here for 50 years. We can't tell our families. We can't do this. We spend money on security that we don't need to." Why is it still being done? Because it's a habit, and the habit is not going to change. Understand that. It's not going to. Nothing I say, nothing until these people pass away. There's old CIA agents that are still working on the same mandates. You ask them, which I have, why are you doing this? They don't even know. They have no idea. They said, well, you know, it's what I was told to do. So change not only comes about slow, but it comes about by looking in the correct places. And the correct places are, look at the groups that do not have to answer to anyone. We need to investigate those groups. Are the answers here in Washington on the floor of some building? Absolutely not. They're not there at all. In fact, you could take everybody here in Washington, I believe, and they wouldn't even be able to spell the word UFO. And that's why they're looking, and that's why they're upset. Yeah, they're not going to find it that way. To find it, you have to understand why it's being kept. And the reason that it's being kept from us is time travel. You don't need to know about time travel. A UFO appears in 1947 with a magnetic field around it that is laced with yttrium and other items. My father left a complete list of what the craft is, how it works, and how it could be replicated again, and how it could be sent back in time again as a gift. So the technology is there. We're working on it. Doctors are working on it. These are people that feel that they are saving the world by sending this craft back. And this was their best guess. Now, hear the word guess, and don't quote this out of context, anybody that's filming it. It's a guess. It was a guess by the military that that's where they came from, that's what they wanted. Why were they clones? Because man can't travel in space, my father says. If you will notice, NASA has never tried to send a human being outside of friendly space, and they won't. Friendly space means the magnetic field around the moon and around the Earth. Why didn't they just send someone out a few million miles and bring them back? Because they die instantly, and they've known this. That's why we have had this farce by NASA saying that we're going to Mars. We're not going to Mars, ladies and gentlemen. There's no way. But who we will send to Mars is robots. And the little EB, extra biological entity, was a robot. Tell you an interesting thing about that, my father says. They had 2 brains. That was in the Johns Hopkins report. Not 2 hemispheres, but 2 brains. They guessed that one of the brains was for running the entity. The second brain was laced with integrated circuits and other types of crystal electronics that we still don't understand today. And they guessed that that one sent back the information through time to see what was taking place. And until you understand the time phenomena here, or the time travel that has been kept from you, and it will be continued to be kept from you, until you understand that, and until we're educated to that point to understand it and not abuse it, then these secrets won't be given up to any of us. My wife and I sat at a table, long table, brought there under false pretenses. It had Pentagon people, it had religious people. It also had people that worked on the Philadelphia experiment there. They told us about things and about the Hopi Indians, which are very closely related to time travel, and they will tell you that. And they told us these things, and I was dumbfounded. I was amazed by it. But then the entire picture begins to open up, and you understand why the information is being kept from you. Now, you think you have a right to know. My father says, no, you do not have a right to know. And the analysis that I give it, as Phil Corso Jr. is, you've seen the movie The Matrix. You've seen the guy eating the steak, and he says, I know the steak is not real, but it tastes like a steak. Put me back the way I was before I had this knowledge. Feel lucky that you don't know. Just go on with your lives, go on with your religion, and be happy. Is it ever going to change the world to where we don't fall off the end like Dr. Stephen Greer goes? Maybe. But if you understand the phenomena or the ability of time travel, it will answer a lot of questions of why we do not need to know as a species, because we will probably abuse that privilege. Now, the ship. That's my interest. Time travel is my interest. I build experimental aircraft along with my wife and my 3 sons. My father, I can see, in his wisdom, has always been training me to build a type of craft. The difference between the crafts I build now and the crafts that he conveyed to me is very little. One was living biology, the other one is inert biology made from oil, which is composites or fiberglass. A very good friend of mine is Bert Rutan, which is the godfather of all this. Bert is very involved in some very secret work. He has 2 facilities. One of the facilities is his above-ground facility, which is called Scale Composites, and he's involved in other, which you guys call Area 51, which my father says does not exist. But there is facilities at Groom Lake, and there are crafts and I will quote, like I believe it was Neil Armstrong says, "How dare you send us to the moon on bicycles when the military is there in Ferraris?" And remember, a UFO is time travel. A UFO has a field around it. It glows from the element yttrium, which is laced through the living biology of the craft. And it moves simultaneously in many dimensions at the same time. Dimension is something that we as a species find hard to understand because we only use 14% of our brains. All time takes place at this moment, right now. That UFO is stuck in between different dimensions. An atomic explosion, for instance, my dad says we should have known. Teller was a very good friend of his. And Teller says we should have known the first time we saw a mushroom cloud and it went up like this, that it was also putting an energy plume down through the center of the earth and out the other side into a different dimension. Why were the UFOs interested in that? Because the explosion takes place simultaneously in this dimension and another dimension. Very disturbing. Until we know what's in my father's notes, and until I can release these things to you, and until we are educated to understand these different properties of time travel, not much is going to change. What time we got? Yeah. Bill, would you like to say anything else? I think I've pretty well... Yeah, or we could do questions. It's just I have no agenda here. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for you regarding Corso. Do you think there could be any correlation between them as markers in time?
You know, I don't know. My father died before crop circles.
I want you to repeat the question.
Okay, is there any correlation between time and crop circles? I don't know. You know, I have my own personal beliefs, but, you know, I don't think it's that important. But crop circles are certainly mysterious. They're certainly beautiful. There must be a reason for them. If people are making them, you know, then they're keeping all of us intrigued. I don't know. You're welcome. Yes, sir.
I take issue with one of your statements that it would be, we would be better to forget and not to know the truth. In terms of knowledge about him, as you say, your father has, and you can't dispute it. I appreciate it go along with your reasons for not doing it, but I think that's a very dangerous statement to ask a group, especially this group here.
Yes.
To ignore.
I saw the looks. I saw the looks on your face. Yes, it's something that you don't want to hear. That's right. All I'm telling you is what my father said. My father says, yes, you don't need to know everything. And I'm sorry, but that's the way he put it to me. And indeed, he did not tell us, even our family, anything prior to 1992. So you don't need to know. Maybe you'll need to know tomorrow. I hope so.
What do we need to know about?
You need to know where to look. You need to know where to look and why to look. And if you expand on this thing of time travel I just mentioned to you, you will begin to understand why it's kept from you.
What about energy?
What do you mean energy?
Alternative energy.
Alternative energy? Oh, yes. Dr. Greer's right. They're there. And I've talked to Dr. Greer. He's been to my house. Yes, they're there. And my father told him about them. He told about a small atomic unit the size of a football, this big, top of this table, that they put in Alaska and it produced so many millions of gallons of water through a reverse osmosis unit, ran by itself for 6 years, and it was just a test. Then they took it and threw it away. Why? I don't know.
Do you think that we don't need to know about that?
No, he told about that. They're in his notes, but I can't release these notes. I've tried. If anyone else thinks that they can help me release them, you know, God bless you. Help me.
Don't you think vis-a-vis a book like Exopolitics that we're in a dangerous situation in the planet
Yeah.
using oil?
Yeah, and for instance, let me tell you something that maybe answer that question. The integrated circuit is only part of that device that they found in the craft. There was another part. And the other part was a nanomechanical. and develop, and you've never hear science talk about this anywhere. But my dad took to John Glenn a development and showed him the actual brief on it and the pictures of it, a small automobile that ran on 4 flashlight batteries for a year with this fluid amplification, which we know is a contradiction in our science. We can't amplify fluid, but this other part of the IC did. This was the other half. So this type of technology is what the Air Force is holding right now.
What about matter, antimatter batteries?
I don't know anything about that. I can only relate on my dad's notes. As far as the craft goes, we know a lot about the craft. He left Burt Rutan a paper that I haven't taken to him yet, but now it's time to take it.
What about gravity coherent waves? Using gravity, amplifying gravity.
Well, you don't need to amplify gravity, and you don't need to do any of that if you have time travel. It's all related. Yeah, I met Al Pudolph. He came to the house. A lot of scientists came to Dad's house when he wrote the book. And when they came there, they said, we know that all our technology has taken place between the years of 1960 and 63, and nothing else has happened after that, so we knew we had been helped. Anything that happened after that was just an adaptation or a further expansion of what had already been put there in the reverse engineering. Zero-point gravity is a beautiful theory, and my dad didn't expand much on that. But if you think about the field around the craft and the no motors, no engines, no means of self-propulsion on this craft except for the brain part of the little units that were in there, then you realize that this was a dimensional craft, which my father says. And being a dimensional craft is something that we find hard to understand. Infinity, as you know, we're looking for there's all types of theories of looped time travel. There's straight line time travel. There's time where it's been altered and then comes back. The paradoxes all involved and such like that. Well, we're just not that intelligent yet to understand that. But let me say this. If time travel is indeed real, as my father thinks it was, and the others that think it was, von Braun and some of our very brilliant minds at that time, we have to realize that we're moving in that direction to build this craft again and send it back again, which we can't comprehend. What do you mean again? It's already been done. You know, so these are the things that we have to grow up as a species to understand. And as we begin understanding these more, then we can take these technologies and apply them in the proper terms that we need to apply them in. And are they there in my father's notes? Yes, because they're not my father's notes. These are scientists. These are the world's best people. Dr. Greer came to the house and wanted some of this. I turned him away. I have to apologize. I didn't, at that time, we were being sued. We were being threatened. We were having a lot of difficulties within the family. The family didn't want to have any more to do with it. But I'll get with Dr. Greer again and see if maybe we can get some of this stuff going. Yes?
You talk about a great advance in technology, but you don't give a teenager necessarily the keys to the car. What about our maturity to handle these things? What about our spiritual maturity?
Very good question. That's the question that... the question is, what about our maturity to handle these issues coming up? You don't give the teenager the keys to the car without him being mature enough to drive the car and understand it. That's true. And we are not as religious, as a mental, and as a loving society yet ready to understand these technologies. We have to mature. Now, because of the gift of Roswell, we're on an altered timeline, but it's only a physical altered timeline. It's only scientific. So we have to learn that mentally we have to be able to accept these gifts and understand them. We need to, it would change the face of religion. It would change the face of our society, which we want to do. But are you really prepared to make these changes? Dr. Greer talked about China being an emerging power. Well, are you ready to share with them? Or do you really want your price of gasoline to be $10 a gallon? Because that's probably what he says it will be. So, you have to, we really all have to do our part to bring about these technologies, but not by going looking in cupboards and blaming governments and blaming culprit groups. They'll give this stuff up as they can.
The human race has been violent since recorded history, so what do you think it would take for us as a species to change?
Love.
But that's, I don't
Jesus taught us love, and whether you believe in him or not, the point is that love means taking care of your fellow man, and it means that we're all in this together. If there is time travel, maybe now I said, so don't get angry and throw things at me, but maybe that's all we get as a God. Maybe we only look after ourselves. Now, the universe would be no reason to exist if we were not aware of it. There would be no reason to have God if we were not here.
Did your father believe in forward time travel?
My father believes, from the scientist that he worked with, that time travel is a everyday occurrence within our military. That's all a UFO is. It's a time traveler. It is. No, there's only backwards. Yeah, Einstein's theory. But if you think about it, someone comes back from the future, that's the same as knowing the future. So if we were given a gift from the future with the Roswell and some of the other crashes, oh, by the way, before I forget, we're going to have other crashes, my father said. It's going to be in a yearly occurrence. And we have to get them out of the hands of the military. We need a group that can handle that. And that comes from money. So find the money, solve your problems, and the money has to come from people that are sitting out here that have the money. Yes, sir?
Is time travel work still going on at Montauk?
I don't know where it's going on, but I know it's going on at Groom Lake. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And my father left detailed drawings of maybe I can get them out to you guys of how to make these machines for our everyday use. I don't know what's going to happen. You might find me floating down the Potomac River. Who knows? Yes, sir.
Is the United States the only country on this planet that maintains and has a majority of all these technical wonders from?
Absolutely.
Well, what about the other governments like Russia and China? I mean, they're aware of this. Are they not using that as part of a bargaining chip with the United States as far as trade and all the other commerce that goes on around the world?
Well, the civilian advancement of this technology is around the world. That's the brain pool that came from the Jeep, at Roswell. The brain pool that comes from the rest of the technology is only military. So it's not being developed at the same rate that the rest of it is. Any other questions?
What about Iraq and the solid point in exopolitics that the military wants to gain access to a Stargate technology in Iraq, and that's the reason it's going into Iraq?
I don't know. All I can say is...
Very detailed explanation in exopolitics.
Well, the Roswell craft is a time traveling, so it is a Stargate. So, think of it that way. Yes, sir. I don't know. Yes, sir.
Time loops, if they actually are capable of doing the time travel now, are they altering our time loops constantly?
We live in an altered time loop right now because of the technology.
But are they redirecting us as they can change the future if they go out into the future? That is
Who's they? What do you mean?
military, they have that capability?
Yeah, the military has the capability, and I don't think my father thought that they don't understand it too much either, and that's why it's kept quiet until they learn more about it. Remember, the craft moves through all time and space simultaneously, very hard to comprehend. But if you see a craft moving in the 50s, you could also see it moving in the year 2032. That's why it looks opaque. That's why it has auras around it and such like that, because it's dimensional travel. Now, Einstein states in relativity theory, you move from point A to point B, you travel toward the speed of light, and time begins to slow down and such. So you see, there is no classical travel of Flash Gordon going to a nearby planet. There's only dimensional time travel. When you begin going to the other planet, you're dimensionally time traveling. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm wondering if your father ever said anything to you about, I guess, a man he considered his mortal enemy, Philip Klass. Because as you know, he did talk to me about it.
I don't know who that is.
He's a career debunker.
Oh.
These UFOs don't exist. I'm sorry, I asked if his father had ever said to Phil Jr. about Philip Klass. Most of you people know about, he's the big debunker. He's been fighting against UFOs existing for 40 years. Just curious to know if he had said anything to you about it.
No, but remember again, time travel is the reason that there's debunking. Not because of UFO, not because of technologies, not because of that. It's because they don't understand it too much more than I do, which is a peanut shell. It's new. My dad said he's a phony. That's what Dad said. I have no opinion whatsoever about him. Yes, sir.
Yes, I was wondering about the connection your father may have had with actual extraterrestrials.
Yes, he tells a story, and this story was kept quiet because it made him look loony. And indeed it does. But yes, he had personal contact, and I have an artifact from that. Sent it to a very famous scientist. Someday he'll return it to me, and there's a purpose for it. Yes, ma'am.
Your father had contact with real ETs or these robotic things that were in the craft?
They were different looking than the craft. Yeah, he drew a picture of them, taller and thinner and such like that. Father was a very strange man. My father had almost perfect recall, photographic memory. The more I think I understand him, the more I don't understand who he was. I've seen him do things that were quite unreal, things that I guess you could call no more than a miracle sometimes. He was in too many places at one time to have the career that he had. Bill will contest to that. It's almost unbelievable that a man could sit at Panmunjom and be in charge of Rome after the war and work with all the administrations and be in on the missile crisis with Kennedy, releasing that information when Kennedy didn't want to. That's another story, but I don't want to go into there was a lot of politics besides UFOs. UFO was a small part of my dad's career, a very small part. Bill and I will try to put out more of that. It seems like every time we try, it just kind of fizzles and dies on the vine. Yeah, connecting the dots with Paula Harris was a dear friend of my father. I think she loved him as much as I did. And the contact experience is in Paula's book. Paula is from Rome, and she held it back because in this country, it's if you saw her lecture, it's treated so much more laughable here than in other parts of the world. She showed me something very interesting today, where an article appears at the headlines of one of the top newspapers in Italy, where here it doesn't even appear at all. So it just shows that there's a different attitude here. The attitude, you people take it serious, but most of the world out there in the United States does not take it serious. We need to change them, educate them, and work on them. We need to get these papers out. If Stephen Greer could have these papers, he could probably work miracles. Can I give them to him? I don't know. I really don't. Time's up? Yeah, I got the signal. Bill, would you like to add anything?
No, I just for elaboration and to continue the discussion, at 4 o'clock we'll be talking about Colonel Corso and the politics of disclosure at 4 o'clock here. So, and there are 2 workshops tomorrow. Phil has one, I have one, and for anybody with questions, arguments, comments, come to the workshop.
Thank you very much.